Hello guys, Linker here with one of my most requested videos to date, an artifact tier list guide. In this video, we're not just going to rank all artifacts in those tiers, but we're also going to give advanced insight into artifact usage and suggest which class artifacts you should upgrade beyond those 3 stars. Like and subscribe. You might be thinking you already have, but statistically you haven't. Thank you so much, and let's get into it. Starting off ranking artifacts for all modes, we have Grace, giving 20 flat dodge, 15% extra max HP, alongside 220% of a hero's attack rating as a shield whenever they ult. The shield comes with mind control immunity for 3 seconds. One unknown fact is the mind control immunity on the shield stops if the shield is broken, so in the endgame this artifact is very situational. You need a hero to ult, then get hit by a mind control within 3 seconds without any other heroes or enemies hitting them, almost instantly popping the shield. The dodge is flat amount, which makes it very strong as the first artifact that you get, but significantly weaker after. Now you might be saying, Linker, you're trashing so hard on Grace, is it going to be F tier, D tier? No, it's actually going to find a comfortable home in this C tier due to the underappreciated 15% health on it. The health alone gives him some viability on heroes that scale off of health like Nomura, and the unique combination it brings to the table allows it to find some usage on some dodge-oriented tanks like Rowan, Kaz, Ezio, stuff like that. Next is gonna be I. It gives 10% physical resistance, 10% crit, and the passive. Whenever a hero crits, they gain 25 haste points and their crits deal 30% more damage for 3 seconds. This is one of the most internally synergistic artifacts with plenty of haste on it, making it a completely optimal choice on the likes of Source and Shamira, and a great one on heroes like Khazard, Gwyneth, and Pharrell. It does have some issues though. It's inconsistent, it's a little slow, not all heroes can proc it reliably, stat page is your friend if you see where it can work or not. Despite this, its pros far outweigh its cons, placing it in the prestigious A tier. Now, I've seen people make those tier lists where everything is S or A tier. I won't do you guys like this, don't worry. But there will be 3 artifacts that have to go A and above, and Call has to be one of them. Instant 15 haste, 10 magical resistance, and 16 energy points per second, alongside an average of 500 points divided among all allies when a hero dies. Each part of this is completely beastly on its own. The magical resistance over defense scaling so much better, the energy bonus being so good and the best comps in the game is still strong even after the nerf, and I'd argue the most underestimated part of it is the instant haste. Carries love this. It'll make your carries outspeed enemy carries like nothing else. It'll make you ult faster, defining matches with carries like Aaron, Gwyneth, and Pharrell who can attack each other faster when the one side has the call. Whether you're talking about campaign, whether you're talking PvP, that's not to say carries can't run anything else, but rather that for them to run something else there needs to be a good reason. It's not just used for burst though, it's also good for stall sets for the energy region. Think Tassie, think Twins. Some heroes get to enjoy all sides of it like Isolde. It also synergizes well with slows like Alna, and for all these reasons, putting Call on a hero is never a complete mistake. It's the most flexible artifact in the game and a very strong one at that, placing it in the prestigious S tier. Next, for YouTube's monetization's sake, I'm gonna call this Cloak. Durer's Cloak gives 15% defense and health recovery, scaling from 15 up to 30% on low HP. This is a tank artifact, specifically one that relies on healing, which is the meta right now, and I've heard and tested rumors this needs health recovery above 0 to work. That's actually a stat on heroes, but I haven't been able to see it for myself. Regardless, it's very hero specific right now. Mihira used to like it due to her converting extra health into energy, but since then Book was introduced and Cloak became much more marginal. We'll talk more about that in a second. Don't get me wrong, it's still decent on tanks, especially in healing oriented meta, but it's usually used as a substitute, just like Grace, due to 2 artifacts outclassing it, which is gonna have to place it all the way in the D tier, just not strong enough to fight all these other artifacts most of the time. Blade, the most offensive artifact there is, accessible just around level 160 when the mid-game kicks in. It gives attack and accuracy. Users instantly get 10% attack, 25 accuracy, as well as 1.5% attack and 3 accuracy every 3 seconds the fight goes on. I love this artifact, but it's had 3 major downsides. First is competing with haste-oriented artifacts, being the offensive boost of choice in the endgame. Another issue is how it's pretty slow, and another one is how most heroes don't gain much from it, being support-oriented. Despite this, in the right circumstance, it can really shine. Attack-oriented heroes can use it very well. Specifically, it finds default placement on the likes of Talene, Athalia, and Rosaline, with niche placements on other carries when the fight goes on for long, positioning it in the average C tier. Chalice. This is an artifact that's centered around one mechanic: regeneration. It's the selfish tank's artifact of choice, especially in slow fights, but even in fast ones, it gives small amount of both HP and defense, a bonus that works so well together. It gives a solid fight even to physical and magical resistance in the survive the one hit test, but the passive regenerating 1.5% health per second over 45 seconds is so major. Almost 70% health over the fight is just incredible. This is especially fun to use on regenerating tanks like Orthos and Sirius. It just looks so ridiculous, but it's probably the best on those that have no other access to self-healing like Mizoth, sometimes even Rowan. The only issues with it is going to be how little it does for the team and how strong offensive enemies nullify its passive, so it has to find a place in the B tier. Conviction is going to be a sad story. It gives 2 flat stats, crit and accuracy, as well as the passive granting a small bonus to attack on the condition that there's no enemies nearby. Lastly, it unleashes a small knockback shockwave every 15 seconds, not including the start of the fight. While on paper this looks like an optimal Gwyneth artifact, it just does not do enough. The flat stats do not scale well into the endgame, making it a substitute artifact at best. Its best used on maybe Flora, maybe Gwyneth, Beryl, Khazard, all heroes that like critting from far away, but all of them have other choices that far outclass this, usually 2 or maybe even 3 of them. Think Call, Eye, Blade, Chaosbringer, and so on and so forth. And because of this, it's just gonna be the F tier. I would rework it in some way, maybe haste, maybe scaling stats, maybe an initial knockback, but until then it's gonna find its place on the heroes I have nothing else for. Now, we're on to class artifacts, a new mechanic really changing the endgame meta artifacts around. I'll tell you, they're all either slightly above or below average, but can you guess which one is best? Comment below what you think it'll be and we'll rank them in just a second. Another common question about them is the upgrade order, which we will address in just a bit after this tier list, but first let's rank Book, the sorcerer artifact. Book is one of my personal favorites, giving a big early game advantage at a price. It's used by sorcerers who really benefit from the early ult, think Ayn, Safiya, Mahira, and so on. While it does give you a fast ult, it does not give you haste, and it does come at a price. But endgame players that know how to make that sacrifice efficiently find solutions where others can't. Because of this, Book is gonna find a comfortable home in the B tier, but it can even almost be worthy of an A tier placement if you really know how to make the best out of it in non-obvious situations, like Khazard, for example. Shroud, one of my personal favorites, which is why I had to bring in people like Artie, Grub, and Shazam to get the best idea of it before I make this tier list. Special thanks goes to them. It gives about 10 crit, about 15% HP, and a strong shield at the start of the fight equal to 60% the wearer's max health lasting for 8 seconds. While that shield is up, the wearer gets 20% extra attack. Now the most obvious comparison to this has to be Grace. The shield is 1 time, but it's bigger by a factor of about 2.5-ish, but it's only used once. So the HP bonus is similar, the crit is comparable to the dodge, they also both have passives that remain while the shield is up. In my mind, the biggest difference is going to be the shield mechanics, and an early big shield is much better, especially in the modes where you're fighting from behind, being campaign and PvP for the most of you. However, once the shield expires, this doesn't do much, so while I would say the Shroud is slightly better than Grace, especially on frontliners, after the feedback I know, it's not good enough to justify a move up, meaning it finds its place on the very top of the C tier, being the last artifact we'll put in there. Chaosbringer is one that's very hard to rank. The warrior artifacts give about 30 accuracy and 15% attack alongside the techy passive. The first 2 times hero ults, the artifact deals 220% damage in a small area of effect and permanently raises the hero's haste by 15 points and life leech by 12 points. This means that Chaosbringer is the highest haste bonus increasing artifact in the game. And would you say Linker? Doesn't that mean it's on the top of the SSS tier? Certainly some people say so, but when you look at its applications where things get tricky. For example, Isolt. The hardest part is getting him to ult, so the bonus once he ulted is usually an overkill, meaning Call is the artifact on choice for him in the endgame. A similar case can be made for Source, who enjoys I more than most, especially in the retry-oriented modes like Campaign and TR, where the crit damage bonus, like he stacks on those crits, can really get him to pop off. However, haste bonus is absolutely too big to give up when you need a consistent haste proc, think PvP, and heroes like that enjoy haste more than anything. Wukong, for example, really love this. Because of this, Chaos Bringer is gonna find itself on the A tier. It's a very strong artifact if you know how to use it, but do not go around placing it on Source and Isolt without giving things a second thought. Alright, Tidebearer. Looks awesome on paper, by the way. It gives crit resistance, a stat that scales well alongside HP. The passive procs once every 15 seconds, giving 30% of a hero's max health to them as a 5-second shield. The shield doesn't go to waste after those 5 seconds. Instead, it converts into energy. But despite all of this, it isn't obvious to use. Since it doesn't proc at the start of the fight, it needs the fight to go on for at least 30 seconds for the passive to be very effective over other artifacts. So if Shroud is going to be compared favorably to Grace, this is going to be compared unfavorably. The shield is just too slow. The sustenance-oriented comps like God comp usually are already winning the fight by the time it goes for this long. And despite this, the bonus at the 15-second mark can sometimes be the make or break between a win and a loss, and the crit resistance is a valuable stat in certain matchups. So when you know how to place it, it allows Tidebearer to barely hang on in the C tier, in the very bottom of it in my opinion, and that's good because if it would be any higher it would buff the God comp even further. And lastly, Barricade, the tank artifact, giving 10 crit resistance, a hefty 21% to HP. However, that alone is not enough. Keep in mind it's running against stuff like Chalice. That's where the passive kicks in. When the highest attack ally, usually the carry, suffers fatal damage, that damage is ignored entirely, and on top of that, the hero holding this artifact transfers 40% of their health as a shield to that ally. Both of these can be activated once every 15 seconds. People hate on this, but I beg to differ. If you notice who this goes on, and I think this is the biggest mistakes, you can make proper use of this and it can be amazing. Think of your Gwyneth, your Khazard, your Sophia. How often do they get Tassie teleported on randomly and just die? Think about Campaign Titus or the Zolrath, just one-hitting a frontline carry like Isolt. If you use this correctly, it can be incredible to support your allies, allowing you to mitigate an incredible amount of damage, basically unlimited. It also goes especially well with heroes that can handle while losing some health. Think Brutus, think Gorvo, think Defensive Thorin. Because of this, it finds a comfortable home in the respectable B tier. Next, we're going to talk about class artifact upgrades, but first, if you've made it this long in the video, please like and subscribe. These take a lot of work for me to do. I appreciate it. So for class artifact upgrades, while they're influenced by the tier list, they're not entirely the same. The last class artifact I would upgrade is going to be Tidebearer. It's getting less than 1 crit resistance and 2 HP per level, at least viable artifact of the bunch. It's just not going to cut it. 4th place goes to Shroud. While the artifact is graced, 1 crit and 1.5 HP usually isn't that big of a difference on the heroes that it goes on. On the middle of the pack, there's going to be Barricade, bringing 1 CR and 2 HP. This tankiness boost can be meaningful for heroes that use it. Think Brutus surviving another hit. Chaos Bringer is going to be the 2nd place. 5 accuracy and 1 attack is great. Very strong stats for heroes that use them well. People should pay more attention to how good accuracy is. But the 1st place has to go to Book. The only one that gets 3 awesome stats in every upgrade, 1.6 crit amp, 1 HP and 1 attack. This is an awesome offensive blend. You will feel packing a punch. These rankings take into account the extra slots you get too. Book and Chaos Bringers are gonna be the most hungry artifacts slot-wise, solidifying their top 2 placements. And with that, I hope you guys liked this video. Let me know what you think below, and I've been Linker. Peace.